Hello, welcome to another episode or the first episode of the Talkin' Rangers podcast. This is episode number 1. I am Blair, also known as Bubbs, alongside Joe. We're going to have podcasts up a lot during the season, weekly shows coming up for the 2023-2024 New York Rangers season. Joe, looking forward to getting this started. How's it going, man?
Dude, I'm excited. Long off season compared to last year.
Yep.
Kind of stuck, not getting as far as like we did last year, but we got the same team in place. I'm just confident, optimistic, but it's the Rangers, so you never know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be an interesting season. Hopefully it ends ultimately with a cup, but it's going to be interesting. You got a lot of good young teams around them, in the Atlantic and in the Metro as well, that the Rangers are going to have to compete against throughout the season, especially, early on with teams like the Sabres that pop up on their schedule early. So we can kind of break it down. We'll break down a lot in today's episode, pretty much a season preview episode, if that's what you want to call it. We'll start here with some of the preseason stuff. And Pete, first original thoughts on Peter Laviolette. So the New York Rangers actually close out their preseason tonight. And in a week from this episode right now, a week from today, which is Thursday, though by the time you're listening to it might be Friday, they'll head out to Buffalo to play the Sabres on opening night. So what are your thoughts overall so far on preseason and what you've seen from some of these young guys that have really performed well and kind of your expectations from preseason, going into the season?
I mean, obviously, when you get a new coach, it's a little bit of an adjustment period, just like systematically, like as far as like neutral zone coverage, or offensive zone entries, defensive zone coverage, breakouts, and all the stuff like power play, special teams. I'm just hoping that from what the little I've seen from Lavalette talk to like the media, seems like he'll be a little bit more like on top of players. I feel like Gallant kind of just let them do their own thing, which again, you don't want to be on top of the players, but a lot of times I felt like last year he would be more harsh on the younger guys, but he would give a lot of leeway to like Panarin. He didn't. I wasn't a fan of how he handled Panarin. I feel like Panarin could have been handled more, and I'm hoping that Lavalette brings more of a kind of just like is more aggressive with the players and not as more like backing off them to like get them to start like fixing their mistakes. Like when Panarin keeps turning the puck over, lazy on his back checks. I want a coach like that's gonna run up out to him, like, dude, like you got to fix that. Like I saw in one of his interviews after one of the games, Panarin I think cost one of the goals by not back checking and kind of called him out. But I'm looking forward to hopefully a little bit more harsher on the players and just keep up. Honestly, just keep up where they were last year. Like, don't really change much. But like I said, be a little bit more harder on the players and hopefully gives some of the kids more of an opportunity. I'm looking forward to seeing more playing time from the 3 kids.
Yeah, definitely. I agree too. Like, as you mentioned with the press conferences, you've heard a lot more, and you've even seen it in practices, even just after some of these preseason games. They've had some little bit more tougher practices, more, I guess you want to say, like conditioning type practices where, early on there's been a higher sense of accountability with Laviolette. I mean, he's been around the league for a while. I mean, so was Gallant, but he's been able to finish the job. Gallant was never able to do that, and that could be the difference in a way, maybe with Laviolette, where he's been able to win a cup. He's had a lot of experience. He's been to a couple of cups. He's pretty much coached pretty much every team in the Metro plus the Rangers now as well. So he's been around. He kind of has that accountability factor, and I like that, especially as you mentioned with the young kids, where you have Laugh, you have Hedon, and even Kakko. Those guys. Hopefully, he gets more out of them. Are you expecting much from those guys this season? Because we've seen flashes, but not a lot, not a ton from those guys, especially for, Kakko and Lafreniere.
It all depends on, honestly, like 2 things. One, how much are they going to play? Are they going to play a power play? Are they going to play a penalty kill? Like how much ice time are they going to get?
Yeah.
And who are they going to be playing with? And then also individually, how much better are they going to get as far as offensively, defensively? Are they going to get more confident? Because a lot of times with kids, most of the time it's just confidence. Like when you can get more confident, you start playing better, and it just boils down to ice time and confidence. But there are some things that, besides those things, that can go into how well he's going to play as far as like just their basic skill set. Like I think Lafreniere, doesn't really do anything like too special in his game. Like he seems like a mediocre player at like stick handling, shooting, skating. Like he seems decent at everything. He doesn't have any elite talents, so it's a little bit harder to predict that. But I'm really excited on Kako and Heedle because I think Kako is really good along the board, strong kid, good passing, and I think Heedle is just really fast, quick shot. So they got some good traits to their games, and like I just said, just depends on how much they play. But I'm expecting big things out of Kako. If I can choose one of the three to have the biggest year, I think it's going to be Kako. What about you? What do you
Yeah,
think?
yeah, I would tend to agree too. I mean, I think he's shown. I feel like he's shown some of the most flash. I mean, I think Heedle's gonna have a really solid season too. But I mean, Kako, last year he did. I mean, for his standards, he put up the most points he's ever had. I think he had 40 points last season. Um, we saw a couple really nice highlights. Lafreniere is interesting. I got to see more out of him. We talked about this a little bit earlier on before we came on. It'll be interesting to see how they kind of utilize him. See more ice time from him, see more opportunities that he gets where he actually takes advantage of those opportunities. Because there were a lot of times last year where he was on the ice, but you didn't really notice it because he really wasn't making much of an impact. As for Kako, you saw a lot more of that. But it's interesting because you had the whole kid line last year, and that got broken up, and it's almost like a new beginning for them because now they've kind of we were all in love with the kid line, the development, all that stuff. They're all going to be so good, but now it's kind of like reality's hit them where you've got a new coach, you've got an entire new coaching staff, and you've got a team that still hopefully can go out and make a deep playoff run. It's kind of now or never for these guys to go out there and fully prove what they're capable of if they want to be with this team for a very long time moving forward, even after these next, couple seasons. Would you tend to agree with that too? It's kind of like feels like a new beginning for them, even though they've been in the league for a little bit. It's like new coaching staff, new opportunity. You got to actually develop and show progress at this point, consistent progress more than what we've seen.
Yeah, I think that in some way it is, like you said, a new opportunity, like a new beginning for them because of just the fact that they're getting a new coach. And I think this is Lafreniere's second coach. I think Heedle maybe is third. I'm not sure if he got to the end of Vigneault, and I know that Kako has been here for Quinn and Gallant. So you have the new coaching staff, a couple new players coming in, but I think this is the year where they need to finally like. Granted, the kid line is great and they've been good for the playoff runs and the past couple of years, but I think they need to have more of a role in the top six and then the power play. They definitely need more playing time. So I truly believe that this year you're going to see them at least get the chances early on to play power play, so maybe some penalty kill, and then get the ice time with those top six roles with like Zibanejad, Panarin. So I'm hoping that they get the ice time that they should be getting, but I think this is going to be like a make or break year for most of them, especially a lot of them are on these short-term contracts. This is going to be a huge year I think for all three.
Yeah, and you mentioned with the power play time, we didn't see a lot of that last year, especially with Lafreniere. You hope that he can potentially play a lot more on the power play and contribute on the power play. Where do you see them fitting in terms of the top six? Do you see potentially Lafreniere being on the Kreider Zibanejad line? We've seen a little bit, but do you see that being something? I think we've seen. I forget exactly what preseason game it was, but I think we saw it at some point during the preseason so far where Lafreniere was on the Zib and Kreider line. Do you see that?
Dude, honestly, I don't know because from what I've seen from Lavalette, he hasn't really been getting certain. Like he's been really messing with these lines. Like I don't really have a clue. Maybe tonight you'll see what their lines are going to look like, but he's been rotating guys in and out. If I had to think or if I had to guess, I would probably think that they'll put Kako up with Kreider and Zibanejad because I think they want to keep Zibanejad and Kreider together because they've been playing with each other for so long. And I think Kako sliding up at the right wing, he's a natural right winger. I think they want him up there. As far as Lafreniere, I honestly could not guess. I mean, it's so unpredictable because they want to put him on right wing, hasn't looked the best. So for him, it could be either left, right wing, third line, second line. Lafreniere is a little bit harder to predict, but as far as Kako, I think he'll be definitely in the top six, probably on the first line with or Zibanejad and Kreider. Same thing for Heedle. More of it's a little bit more clear for him. He's either going to be the second line or third line center, depending on what they do with Trocheck. But Lafreniere is definitely in a gray area where you don't really know where he's going to play. But yeah, that's pretty much where I think the kids will end up as far as at least at the beginning of the season.
Yeah. And you mentioned Trocheck, depending on where he is, second and third line. I liked what I saw last year at Trocheck, kind of transitioning from, the kids get into some of the other pieces from to this roster. Obviously brought him over from Carolina. Was a really solid piece for the faceoffs because we were, Savannah Jed. That's not his thing.
Yeah, he was horrible.
Finally got a guy that can win faceoffs, win them consistently. And I liked what I saw from Trocheck last year. Where do you see him if you had to predict which line he would end up on, second or third, depending on obviously where they end up, sliding in Heedle at the center spot?
It all depends on what kind of lines they're going to want to set. Like, are they going to want like a third line checking? If the third line, because a lot of teams use the third line as kind of a
Yeah.
shutdown checking line, and I think he'd be good for that as opposed to Heedle and Zibanejad. I don't think they fit that checking role, but I think Trocheck could be pretty good on the third line if they want to put like a checking line. Just a
Yeah.
gut feeling, I think he's going to be the second line center. I think that I don't know. I think Laviolette's going to fall more towards his veterans to play in the top six, but I think he'll probably end up as a second line center. What are your thoughts though on Trocheck on the power play, taking a spot away? Like, because Fox, Zibanejad, Kreider, Panarin, they're probably locks for the power play, but then there's that one spot that could go to a kid. You think Trocheck, just because of his like face-off ability, should be on that, or you think that they should be giving one of those spots to the kid?
I'd probably say first power play, I'd probably say it's going to be Trocheck. The face-off ability helps, and you could potentially slot Heedle in on the second power play unit at center, especially if they're just going to move Trocheck on the second line to begin with. You could potentially see him just as that first line with, Zibanejad, as you mentioned, Kreider, Fox, and then, Panarin. I like Trocheck a lot. I do. I mean, I have no issue with him being on the top power play. Do you see it playing out that way, or do you see it potentially unfolding a different way? Would you rather see a kid up there, or are you fine with the five that they're probably, they could potentially roll with Trocheck just being the center?
It's kind of like a little bit of a mixed bag. That you want the kids to get power play time just because they get to feel the puck, get some confidence because they have more time to move with the power play. Obviously, there's one less guy on the ice.
Yeah.
You get your confidence up. You could get more points, obviously, more goals and everything, more ice time in general if you're going to play in the first unit, because they usually play them out like a minute 30, minute 45. So the second unit doesn't play that much. But I do feel like the Rangers have had some trouble winning faceoffs, and that's honestly a key thing is their power play set up. They're the best in the league. But they do have trouble, I think, breaking into the zone and retrieving the puck. A lot of times when they put the puck in, like, Panarin doesn't go and get it, so I trust a guy more like Kako to go down in the corners and get the puck, but
a little bit more physical.
It'd be tough to see what they do. I do believe though they're going to go with the veterans. I think Trocheck probably will start on it, but again, I don't really know honestly what to expect at a Lavalette because obviously he's not Gallant, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think I could see a lot of kind of fluid change early on because again, as we talked about with Laviolette, he seems like he's a guy that's maybe holds guys a little bit more accountable, and accountability is something to look out for here. Like if you're not getting production from your first power play unit and Heedle's playing well on the second unit, you move him up and play a kid there on the first unit potentially, if they're not getting enough production from their first line power play. I could potentially see that happening. Could you see that, early on in the season kind of mixing and mashing, figuring out what works, what doesn't work?
I think for the power play, I think they're going to have a pretty long leash for those guys. I think it's going to take I think they'll give them a couple weeks. If they're not playing well, then I think they'll start like mismatching it and like putting different guys in. But I think as far as lines though, I think you'll see a lot of different pairings. Like as far as forward lines and even the defense pairs, because I think he really just getting a feel for the team, but a little frustrating that we're a week away and he really doesn't have an idea what he wants. Maybe he does, and he's just still seeing stuff out. But from what it seems like, he doesn't really know what he wants the lines to look like. So, you think that the pairings are going to be like relatively the same? Like Gustafsson just slides in, or you think like he's going to like come out on Thursday and put like Miller or Fox?
It's so interesting. I don't really know what to expect from him. We kind of talked about I've liked what I've seen from Gustafsson so far. I mean, I think, I know last night he had that one play in front of the net that wasn't great. His net front defense wasn't very good last night, but when I've liked what I've seen from him. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. I think a lot of it's going to be decided within the first week or two. It's going to be a lot of changing, just with just the more lines,
Yeah.
more with the regular lines, and obviously the power play. Um, and I'd probably say Gustafson. Would you agree? Or do you think they?
I like what I've seen out of Gustafson and Schneider.
Yeah,
I feel like they
yeah, they've
match
been
well with each other because you got one guy who's pretty solid defensively, aggressive, and a big hitter, and then Gustafson brings more of that offensive skill role, and I
yeah,
think that definitely bodes well for Schneider because I think that takes a little bit of pressure off of him because as a
yeah,
young kid trying to produce a little bit on offense. I think having a guy that you can trust him, like, okay, this guy's going to be the guy who's going to produce, and I just got to worry about making sure I don't get caught and just play solid defensively. So I like those two guys together. Obviously
Truebar.
and Lindgren and Fox should 100%. I would not split them up. Like they've been playing with each other since juniors. They should stick. And then I think the Miller and Truba pairing out of the three, I think mostly concerns me because I feel like Truba he's a little slow. I mean, he's a great guy to have on your team, but he seems like he gets caught a lot. And there were some times last year, and I think one or two times in the playoffs against the Devils, where he just got caught on the at the blue line, and he has trouble getting back. And there's some times where he either gets beaten or he's going to take the guy down for a penalty. But
Yeah,
as far as the defensemen, I truly think that they should keep them like how they were, just sliding Gustafson, obviously. But I'm pretty excited about the defense. I think they'll be good this year.
yeah. I'm excited to see what Gustafson could do. I mean, last year you talked about his offensive ability. I had 40 points. I have a stat that I found: 40 points, 12 power play points, 60 blocks, and 50 hits, which was only 23 defensemen last year had that, and he was one of them. And they got him at a low price. He fits
Yeah,
the system, knows the Laviette
that
system,
is.
and we talk a lot about the Devil's speed. He's a good, solid puck moving defenseman, which is what you want, something that you can counteract with that. So I'm excited what I've seen. I've been excited from what I've seen from Gustafson, and he's certainly, a big piece. And I believe moving forward. Overall, I feel pretty good about the defense. I mean, I assume you do too, kind of just with the way they're gonna. I like where they're at defensively. I
Yeah,
mean,
I like.
Truba,
Yeah,
he'll take he's kind of that big hitter. I mean, Lindgren is that big thumper type guy, kind of that goon. Truba is that big hitter. They're gonna take penalties, but they're gonna lay big hits. We saw Truba lay
yeah,
that big hit on Timo last year in the postseason. Um, so you kind of got that good with a mix of some offensive guys like Fox and Gustafson. Keandre can, he had a big season last year offensively too. So they've got a good mix defensively, which is which I like.
yeah. I mean, they got guys like we were saying, some guys offensively, some guys defensively, the big hitters, the scorers. So I
Yeah,
like the individual players. I think will be good. We'll just see how they develop
lines.
into the system. As far as I think Housley's the defensive coach, so maybe it'll be a little bit different than the defensive coach last year. We'll see that. What do you think? What do you think about Shesterkin this year? You think he's going to continue to be top three, maybe the best goalie in the league?
I think so. I mean, I believe in Shesterkin. I mean, he's in the prime of his career, so I feel like he can only kind of stay along this pace or only get better. Um, but the team does have to. I mean, they gotta have a good forecheck. They've got to be able to put up some goals too. I mean, they've got to help them. Last postseason against the Devils, they didn't help them. They fell apart. They've got to put up offensively. They've got to be a lot better than what they were later on in the season, specifically against the Devils, because the Devils can score a ton. That's I feel like is the biggest threat to the Rangers is the Devils, and that's why I'm bringing it up a lot. But um, I like. I mean, he's one of the best. I mean, Vezina Trophy winner, obviously. I mean, he's in the prime of his career. I don't expect him to get worse out of just the middle of nowhere. I expect him to continue to be top 5, top 3 in the NHL. Would you see the same? I mean, he's the seems like the heart and soul of this team, and without him, you don't know where we'd be. I mean, having a goalie like that. I mean, we've been lucky with goalies. To,
Yeah.
Rickard to Lundqvist to now Shesterkin. I mean, we've had some of the best goalies that you can ask for. So
Do you think he'll play more towards what he did last year, or more towards what he did in 2022 when he won the Vezina? Like, do you think he'll be towards that like a 930? Or do you think he'd be closer to like 920, or somewhere in between that?
yeah, I think probably somewhere in between. I mean, last year was. I mean, he was still what? I think he still finished top 10 in goals allowed per game. I think he was right at the 10th. I think he was right at 10th in terms of the save percentage. I mean, he'll be right. I think he'll be right back in the conversation for the Vezina. So 920, 925. I don't know if he'll hit 930 again, 935. I think 935 was his save percentage the year he won the Vezina, if I remember correctly.
It was upper 930s.
Yeah. So I mean, I'd say 925, 930. I mean, I think he's going to be right back in the conversation. I mean, he's one of the best goalies in hockey. He's in the prime of his career. I mean, he's 27 years old.
Just gotta stay healthy.
He's yeah, because you don't Jonathan Quick behind him. He's the backup goalie, but he's not the same Quick.
Yeah, we ran into, unfortunately. He's no Shesterkin.
No. You think Quick is better than what we've had? I mean, how do you view Quick? From a backup goalie perspective. You think he'll be all right? I think he'll be all right. I mean, he didn't have the best night last night, but
the first couple of preseason games, he's looked okay. I mean, he's obviously given up a decent amount of goals. I mean, I don't think his save or his goals against isn't great. I think it's around like 6, but the Rangers in front of him, to his credit, have been playing not very good defensively. Like I was talking earlier about Panarin back checking. I think there was a play where like Lafreniere gave up on the play. So it seems like not more defensively, more so the forwards are going to be, I feel like, not the greatest defensively. So they're going to get a lot of chances, the other team, I feel like. So I don't know how many games he's going to play. Obviously, you want to make sure that Shesterkin's going to make it the whole season, but he will play, I think, a decent amount of games. I'm confident that he'll be pretty good. Obviously, the goalie coach that the Rangers have is probably the best. I mean, Benoit Allaire, like you said, developed Lundqvist, and like all through those years, look at all the backups they've had. Pretty much all of them are good. Like Ronta was good, Cam Talbot was good, even like Halak last year. I thought like he had a little bit of a rough start, but I think Allaire really helped him out, and I think hopefully he can take some like, even though he's obviously more veteran player and older than Shesterkin, he can kind of see how he plays, and then obviously he's going to be working with Allaire in practice. So I'm fairly confident that he can stick around like a 900 and just win like more than half his games. I think would be fine. I mean, because he just needs to stay healthy, stay behind Shesterkin, and just to continue just to play. I think if for a backup goalie, you need at least average play. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, for the 20-something games he'll be in, assuming Igor stays healthy and gets 56 to 58 games played. I trust him. I'm going to do it. Halak last year was horrible to start, but he actually ended up turning it around. Moving on, I wanted to get into a little bit too about just some of the other top line guys, kind of going from the goalies here to some of the top guys. What are your thoughts on Kreider and Zibanejad? Again, we talked a little bit about who might slot in at right wing with them on the top line. What are your thoughts on those two guys coming into the season? Kreider was, the power play, a big power play guy in that Devils series last year. What are your thoughts on those two guys coming in?
I think that they'll continue to probably be towards the top of the league in like power play goals, power play points. Yeah. So I'm not really concerned about them power play wise. I think Zibanejad, I was a little disappointed last year, obviously in the playoffs. Yeah. I don't know, I think he might have only had one goal, maybe only, I don't know. I don't think he had any assists. Maybe he had one in that last game 6, but really disappointed in that. But as far as the regular season, I think he was our best player, 5-on-5. I want to see him just kind of just keep going north-south, because I think last year he was kind of looking a lot to make passes east-west and looking for Kreider. I think he's got speed and a great shot, and I feel like if he can continue to just stick to his game, because the power play points will come, but even strength, I think if he can take a little bit of a step forward to how he was playing back in like 2019 before the shutdown, I think he could come close to a 100-point season, 50 goals. Like, he's a guy on the team that I think has the most like scoring upside, even more than Panarin. And as far as Kreider, I mean, you're gonna get what you get out of him. He's gonna be in the front of the net in the power play. He'll get you like 10 to 15 goals on the power play, maybe 10 to 15 even strength. He's gonna score around 30 this year. So a little, not the biggest fan of him, 5-on-5. He's not great with the puck. Doesn't really get his hockey sense. And another thing about what I don't like about Kreider is such a big guy and fast guy. He never throws his body around. Like, you never see Kreider. He kind of like bangs guys like as they give up the puck, but you don't see him like take a guy out or anything. But again, you know what you're going to get out of him. Like I said, Zibanejad, I think he has the highest scoring upside. So what do you think about Panarin and Trocheck? Like, do you think they'll have relatively the same years as they did last year? Maybe a little like their stats might go up or down? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean Panarin had led the team in points. He had 92 last season. I think he'll come around that again. I mean I like Panarin. I mean he hasn't shown up in the postseason, but I would like to see him crack. I mean he had only 29 goals last year. I mean I'd like to see him get back to maybe crack 30 this year. I mean I don't know if that'll happen, but if he could potentially crack 30, he hasn't since the first year he was with the team and back in 2019. But I mean, I have the same expectation for Panarin. My biggest thing with Panarin is the biggest knock on him. Outside of that Game 7 goal against Pittsburgh, he hasn't shown up in the postseason. He's a very solid regular season guy. I mean, he led the team in assists and points, but he hasn't shown up in the postseason. He does pass up a lot of shots. Sometimes he tends to pass too much, which I feel like is just sometimes the Rangers in general. They pass just too much. Um, I would like to see him, when he gets those good opportunities in slot to take him and take advantage. I mean, he's got a great shot. And as for, Trocheck, again, we talked about it a little bit earlier on, what he brought last year, was a solid, 60 plus point guy, good with the face offs, good on the power play. So, I liked what he brought from, Carolina, veteran guy for this team. You see the same thing. I mean, I like Panarin. My biggest thing with Panarin, and he's got his jersey and stuff. Like I like him a lot. My biggest thing with him is just the postseason. He hasn't quite shown up in the postseason, but his regular season, stats. I mean, he led the team in points and assists. Maybe get back over 30 goals. I mean, he was at 29 last year. Get back to over 30 from where he was when in his first year back in 2019. You see the same thing from those two guys. You think Panarin gets to that mark this year? Or you think it's more just assists?
I don't want to go off like recency bias too much,
Yeah.
but I actually think Panarin's going to have. I think he's going to regress this year as far as just the point totals. Like, obviously he's getting older. I feel like a lot of teams kind of know how to play him because I feel like the
Yeah.
first year he was really good. I feel like no one really knew how to play him with the Rangers because he changed his game a little bit. Because I feel like when he was on Chicago, he kind of played more of that north-south hockey, and then
Yeah.
he kind of went more east-west when he came to the Rangers, and that was working for the first year. Again, not very good in the playoffs. Very disappointing. I mean, he's a good player. He'll still probably get you 75, 80 points, but as far as like goals wise, I think he'll be around 20. I don't think he's gonna hit 30. Like you said, he doesn't shoot the puck enough. I
No,
mean,
he doesn't.
he had a couple big games last year. I think he might have scored 4 goals against Carolina. Highly doubt he gets that again. He's not a big goal scorer though, but you can rely on him for probably like 20, 25, 50, 75 points, 80 points. But
Yeah.
I'm a little concerned though. Like I said, I think he's gonna regress a little. I hope not. I hope he goes out and breaks the 100-point marker, but
Yeah.
we'll see what happens this season.
Yeah. Totally. I so he sometimes makes those just a bad, those bad mistakes, like those boneheaded mistakes, and he just doesn't get back where, you know, and it's, turn the puck over. It's a 2-on-1. They're going on the other way, and he's just not that type of guy to stop that. But like I just want him to see him shoot, and I feel like as a Ranger fan, every night you're yelling and screaming at the team to shoot, 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 and they just don't because that's just the way they are. But I mean, if he would shoot half the open shots that he had, I think he could easily take over 30. But I mean, that's if he will. I don't know. What are your thoughts on Trocheck? I mean,
Like
we
we were
talked about it a
talking,
little bit
yeah,
earlier,
we
but
were
this thing.
talking about it a little bit earlier, but it's kind of like the same thing. I think he's a gritty player. He's a really good player to have. I honestly think that was the right move, getting him and getting rid of Strome. I think he's really good both ways. He's gritty. He's good on faceoffs. He had a decent year. I believe he was around like 63, 65 points. That's a pretty good year for him. And I think he might have hit a lot of posts too. I saw some stat where he hit like one of the most posts in the league. So if some of those start going in, like we could be talking about him scoring 30 goals this year. Like I'm much more optimistic about like a progression in his stat total in his game opposed to like what I think Panarin is. But I think he could potentially get you like close to a point a game if he is playing on the power play. But I do like his game and his style of play is something that the Rangers definitely need, and that's something that really hurt him in the playoffs where I don't think they were gritty enough, physical enough. And he does bring speed too. Like you see him, he's a pretty like north south. He's a fast guy, and he tries to do some like. I mean, I'm not a big fan of like trying to dangle through guys. Like he's not Connor McDavid, but he's got some
Yeah.
skill to his game too. He's an underrated player though. I'm excited
Yeah.
to see what he can do in his second year.
Yeah, definitely. One other guy I wanted to get to, just speaking on like offensively in their production, is Keandre Miller last year had, crazy career, big, massive career year, 34 assists, nine goals, 43 points, which was by far the most he's ever had. We talked a little about the defense pairings earlier with, the offensive guys like Fox, Gustafson, and then obviously, Miller in that conversation as well, and then your kind of physicality guys like Lindgren and Chuba. What are your thoughts for Miller this year? Do you expect the same point tally, or do you think that was more of a 1 year thing? Are you expecting to see another 40 plus, dare I say, 50-point season from Keandre Miller? You think last year was kind of just one of those years? I heard somebody say that he's gonna break out and have this like 60-point season. I don't see that coming, but I mean, do you see him cracking 40 again? Do you think that's? I mean, maybe if he gets 10, 11 goals, and then he had 9 last year. If he tops that and has a couple assists, I mean, do you think he'll a couple more assists than last year? Do you think he'll crack 40 again? Or you think
I
that
think
was
he
more of a
should.
1 year
I think
thing?
he should. I think he should be right around where he was. Obviously, he's not going to play power play that much. He'll
Yeah,
probably be on the second power play. Personally, from what I'm seeing, I like Gustafson. Unless they want to go 2 defensemen, then that's fine. But he's an unbelievable skater. I think he's the best skater on the team. So big, so fast. His shot, like I don't think he's got a great shot for deflection. Like it seems like Fox could really place the puck where he wants to. Seems
yeah,
like he's more sporadic with his shot, but he's got a decent shot. I think with his speed, if he can continue just to get a little bit stronger, he should be able to. I think you could see him scoring 15 goals. Like he's got that kind of upside just because how good he is skating. Because he was a forward when he was at Wisconsin, and then we made the change to come to the NHL and make that change to defenseman. But he's got a lot of upside. I could see him. I could see him hitting 50. If something were to happen to Fox, they might go to Gustafson. But if they did go to Miller, I could see him get like 55 points because he's
yeah,
just like I said, just such an unbelievable talent. Just can he
yeah,
put it together?
yeah. Totally. I mean, I think he'll definitely hit that 40 range again. I don't know if he'll. It's something to follow. Definitely, if he hits 50, I think he has the certainly the potential, and he's only getting better. Like he's only entering the prime of his career. Um,
Yeah.
but such a good offensive piece. I'm excited for the. We talked about it earlier. I'm really excited to see what these defensive guys can do this year, especially with the addition. I love the addition of Gustafson. He was one of my favorite offseason acquisitions. And another offseason acquisition was Blake Wheeler, where you got to give Drury, a lot of credit. He went into this offseason after the deadline last year with very minimal cap space, and he was able to still bring in some guys that we expect to be some solid pieces. What are you expecting to see from Blake Wheeler? Obviously not the same guy he once was, but a veteran, been in the leagues, with Winnipeg for a very long time. A solid piece to add to, probably, I'd say the second, third line. What are you expecting from Wheeler this season?
I mean, the little I've seen out of him, it looks like he's pretty good in the offensive zone. Um, Not so great defensively, but again, I think he could come on that third line and just kind of just be like a checker because he doesn't have the speed. I mean, I don't think he ever was a fast guy, but again, he's getting up in age. I think he's 37, so
Yeah.
he's a little bit slow, but I think his veteran presence can help guys like Lafreniere, Heedle, Kako, just be a veteran, another guy in the locker room because they do have a lot of young forwards. I'm expecting a decent year out of him just because I think he's going to probably be in the top 6. But personally,
Yeah.
I'd put him as like a third line checking player. But he should have a solid year. And again, like that's a great contract. I think. I think he's getting only like 800,000 on a minimum deal. So
Yeah.
that's a good replacement for a guy like Tarasenko. I mean, he's no Tarasenko, but I feel like that's good value what they did to bring him in. So I'm excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, it definitely the contract was good. Now, as you mentioned, he's not the goal scorer. I mean, Tarasenko when he's hot, he's one of the better goal scorers out there for the top 6. But I think he'll end up on the top 6. I don't. Maybe they again, as you mentioned, maybe they use him on the third line, but I mostly see him, being on that second line, with Panarin and whatever they do with Trocheck and Hedl at center and him at right wing. But it'll be interesting. I like the contract a lot. I mean, how many points are you expecting from him this year? I mean, he had 55 last year. You expecting a drop off? I mean, he's definitely not the 90-point guy he once was. We talked about the age of 37, and
Yeah.
he's not that same guy. So he won't obviously crack 90. But what do you think his ceiling could be for points this season?
I think maybe right around 50. Like I said, he's not probably going to be on the power play. I don't think he will be. And again, I don't know who he's going to play with. He'll probably be flipping between the second and third line. I still think he's a solid player. Should be able to get around 40, 45 points. But he could. I think his floor is 40, ceiling's like 55. So it'll be somewhere in between 45, 50, which is
Yeah.
a solid for, especially because he's only getting paid like 800,000. So I think that's a
Yeah.
good bargain.
Yeah,
Do you,
definitely.
what do you
What was
think
it?
as far as kind of transitioning to like the lower lines in the lineup, the bottom six? Like, do you think Coley or Offman potentially could be on that third line? Do you think they'll make the team, or do you think they'll go with most of the veterans, like the guys that they signed, like Benino, Pitlick, keep it like Gaudreau, VC? Like, what do you think the bottom
Yeah.
look like?
I mean, I think they'll end up rolling with Benino and Pitlick and then like VC, those guys like that. I want to see Coley and Othman. I want to see Othman. I mean, he's been so good. Um, like he's been awesome. I think we'll see Othman at some point. I think he'll start the year down, not with the Rangers. I think they're going to want to develop him a little bit more. He's got to get called up at some point. Same thing with Coley. I don't think either of those guys start. I want them to start the season at this level, especially Othman. I think he especially. But I think you're gonna see them. I think you're gonna see Laviette kind of roll with the veterans early on with, guys like Gaudreau and VZ and Benino and Pitlick on the bottom six. You see that happening. I mean, I would love to see Osmond. I mean, he's ready to come up. I don't think he needs much more time. I, I do you see the same thing, or do you expect those guys to come up? I would love to see them up. I want to see them up, but inject a little bit more youth. I mean, they've already got some youth, but I mean, they bring so much more. They just bring a ton of excitement. I mean, at some point we've
Yeah,
got to see them.
I think Offman, you could definitely pencil him for being in the AHL. I think
Yeah,
for probably the whole year, unless they don't really do much at the deadline, they want to bring a little bit of a spark if they make the playoffs. I think Offman will be up soon. I think he'll, or Cully. I
Coley.
think he has, I think right now it's 50-50. I don't know how much like tonight's game could really help his roster like impact, but I think he does have a chance to be on the team. I think it seems like Lavalette trusts him, and he seems a little bit more ready NHL wise than Offman. He did play a couple of games last year. I could see him making the team as in like a third line role, but
Yeah,
if I had to like make a prediction, I probably would say that both those kids are going to start the year in the AHL, and then you're going to see guys like Benino, Gaudreau, VC, in those roles to fill out the last spot in the third line and fourth line. I could also see Brodzinski making the team because he's like another guy that I think Lava likes because he plays with a lot of speed. So I could see him making the team.
yeah. What are your thoughts on Gaudreau going into this year? Kind of, there's some of those rumors flowing around with the contract and the trade situations in the offseason. You have much expectations for him going into this year as, third? Well, I guess you could say technically second full season because he came over at the deadline 2 years ago with this squad.
Gaudreau? No, they signed Gaudreau 2 years ago in the offseason. They gave him like a 3.6, I think 6 years.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah,
You're good, you're good,
yeah,
dude. But um, I don't know. I mean, I think he's a good player to have on your fourth line. I think he's a really good fourth line player. A third. He could be a third line player on a lot of teams. I just think they've relied a little too much on him the last couple of years to play up in the top six, and he's not that player. I'm kind of excited just to see him play. Like he should just play the whole year, fourth line, and then if you need a guy in third line, he can play third line. But he's a good like gritty player, two-way guy, good defensively, solid with faceoffs. My only knock on him is I think they're just paying him a little too much. I don't
yeah,
think he's like I think he's making around 3.6. But I feel like there's a lot of guys in the Rangers that you can say like good player and getting paid a little too much. But
yeah.
I'm excited to see if he could really just bolster that bottom six, continues to be like a veteran leader on the team.
Yeah, and a guy coming over from Tampa too has the cup experience, which certainly helps. Come postseason time. So I like what he's brought. Again, the contract was I don't know if you want to say it was a big discussion this offseason, but it was certainly discussion on the contract and if he's plays fully lived up to it. I mean, he's solid, but is it up to the contract that he's gotten? It's certainly a conversation. But I want to see one of the young guys up. I mean, if it's Coley, coming up to fill out one of those bottom six roles. It it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Do you have much expectations for Benino and Pitlick, two guys that they've brought in?
Not really. I mean, there's gonna be again. I know Benino won those two cups with the Penguins, so
Yeah,
he's a veteran. He's got playoff experience. I don't know as far as what they're gonna do is the centers. Like I don't know if Gaudreau's going to be the third line right winger, left winger, or if he's going to be the fourth line center. Could be Bonino too.
Yeah.
Hoping just to be a solid fourth line player. Like do your job. Here and there, you can maybe pop a goal in, but just make sure play tough and just be that leader on the team. Be a veteran guy. Like same as Pitlick. He's been in the league for quite a few years. He bumped around a couple spots, but just again be a gritty player, do your job, and occasionally they'll get a goal here and there, but I don't really have that much expectation. Especially it's a fourth line player, but
Yeah.
as long as they're doing their job, like not causing like goals or any mishaps, if they're just playing their game, then there's not really much to a fourth line player, especially a veteran. You usually get what you get out
Yeah.
of them.
They're kind of just 2 year or 2 1 year kind of flyer deals,
Yeah.
both under $1 million. I guess that's what you kind of want, how you want to describe it. So to kind of close things out here, what are your overall expectations in terms of results? And there was an interesting stat I wanted to bring up here. So they did some projections today or the other day on The Athletic for hockey for the NHL season. And they're projecting the Rangers to finish third overall in points with 105.2 is what they're projecting them. They're giving them a 92% chance to make the playoffs, and a 10% chance to win the cup. So do you buy into this team, this roster, this new look? I guess if you want to call it a new look Ranger squad after the deadline last year, changing over the coaching staff, a new look team, new opportunity for the young guys that we mentioned. Are you buying into this Ranger squad as at least a playoff team? And do you expect them to, from right now, early October, expect them to make a deep run in June?
I think as long as like most of the roster stays intact health wise, especially like Igor, Fox, hoping that these guys can continue to stay healthy. I mean, Igor had some scares earlier with injuries, but
Yeah.
other than that, he's been pretty healthy. So if the team is relatively healthy, the Metro I feel like is kind of weak outside of the Hurricanes and the Devils. So I think they should definitely slot into that top three in the Metro.
Yeah.
And then they're either going to have to go through the Devils or Carolina. I do expect playoffs this year. As far as the Cup, I don't know. It's tough because look what happened last year. They just got completely
Yeah.
worn down by the Devils' speed. Are they going to be able to? This new system is that going to be able to counter that? And are they going to be able to hang with the Devils and continue to play well against the Hurricanes? We'll see. But I'm hopeful, because if you get a good goalie and your goalie's hot, which Igor has been, but they
Yeah.
did lose when he was really hot. But again, if some of these players like Panarin and Zibanejad can step up earlier in the playoffs and Igor continues to play well, they could definitely make a run. I can't say that they won't win the Stanley Cup. So I feel like if you get in, you have a chance, especially with
Yeah.
an elite goalie. But this year I'm hoping definitely for one round, like win a round, show that
Yeah.
2 years ago wasn't a fluke, and then build on that. Again, it's an aging team. A lot of people think of
Yeah.
the Rangers as more of a young team, but a lot of the other players are aging. So
Yeah. They're up
if
there.
if these young guys don't take that big step, they're going to rely heavily on these guys. But I'm hoping for, like I said, at least one round win, and then from there you never know. If I had to say, I think they will end up winning a round. I'd say they finish third, play the Hurricanes, beat them, then lose to the Devils. So,
Yeah.
what
The
are your
Devils.
thoughts on the season ending? Like, where do you think they end up?
Yeah, the Devils to me they're the biggest threat without a doubt. Their speed just is tough, and I feel like we certainly made some efforts, but their north south game is just so good. Hughes, I mean they've developed guys. You got Timo, they added to Foley, they've got Nico as well. They've got just a good mix of young and veteran guys, and
Yeah,
two, like they're only going to get better. You assume they only get better because they got 1 year playoff experience under the belt. All those guys last year, where that was their first experience postseason, especially Jack Hughes. Most of those guys, they've got that playoff experience now. So that's going to be tough. They're the biggest threat. The Metropolitan's not great. If we don't make the playoffs, to me, I consider that an absolute failure just because the Metro is not that good. I mean, this should definitely be a top four team. Um, I would tend to agree. I think they could easily win a round. I think we match up better against Carolina, definitely than we match up against New Jersey. Um, Look, if this team, I don't want to sound biased, but if you get a hot Igor and Panarin and those guys like that show up in the postseason, Mika, guys like that, they're scoring and they're hot offensively and they're playing physical and they're kind of similar to what they were 2 years ago, where they had that physicality, a little bit of that, guess, toughness to them where that they just didn't have last year. There was just so
Yeah.
much energy with that team 2 years ago rather than the team last year. And maybe that was they were younger. It was their first time being in the playoffs for, a couple of years. And maybe last year, bringing in guys like Kane and Tarasenko were kind of towards the end of their, their careers, not the same players. Maybe that was a little bit of it. And you were also facing just a young Devils team with so much energy and momentum. And maybe that's why they look slow and sluggish. But look, you get a hot Igor, this team can make a run. I mean, they've got the talent to make a run in the postseason. They'll be in the postseason. Once you get in, anything can happen. My heart tells me, my heart says Stanley Cup champions, but I
I
say
hope, dude.
around
I
maybe you
hope.
get to the Eastern Conference Finals, possibly. You never know. I mean, the Devils could get upset. You never know what's going to happen. I mean, we've seen crazier things, and we never expected the Rangers 2 years ago to get to the Eastern Conference Finals, especially when they fell down 3-1 to Pittsburgh. And Igor was struggling in that series, and then they obviously dominated the rest of the way and came back against Carolina and fell short against Tampa. But anything's possible. I think you've got to win a round. You've got to win a round at least. You can't lose in 5 or 6 to Carolina and then lose back-to-back first rounds. And you go into the offseason kind of feeling like, okay, what did we accomplish this year? We're right back in the same spot we were last year as a first-round exit. So you've got to win a round. You win that, you move on, you get a hot Igor. This team has what it takes, I think, but the Devils are the biggest threat, which I hate saying because I hate the Devils, but you never know. You never know. And
What do you think, before we wrap up, I just wanted to go over one
yeah.
more thing. What do you think is the biggest X factor, like on the team? Who do you think is the biggest X factor as far as the season, besides Igor? If you take Igor out of the equation, obviously he's the guy that's going to drive the team. Like, who do you think is one player who could Fox too? Take out Fox. Fox and Igor, I feel like we know we're going to get out of them. They're the two best players on the team. Like, one guy on the team that you expect that could be an X factor this year.
Like you're just talking entire season, like somebody kind of under the radar,
It could be entire
or
season. It could be in the playoffs. Like, either or. Like, one guy that you think for the whole season as a whole could be like an X factor that could come through where you wouldn't really expect, or just like to elevate their game
yeah.
than they were in previous years.
I would say, I'm really looking forward to seeing what Gustafsson can do this year. I think he's a guy that could potentially play a really big role in this team. Again, puck moving defensive, offensively very good as a defenseman. Like I could see him matching up well against a speedier team like New Jersey. I think he's a huge X factor. This might sound obvious, but another guy just in terms of postseason, I don't know if you want to call it an X factor, but a guy that has to step up if we get there, that's Panarin. He's got to be better. He's got to be so much better in the postseason. I mean, you could throw Mika in that category. You could throw a lot of guys in that category other than really Kreider. Not many guys showed up. It was really Kreider and Igor that showed up last year. So you could throw a lot of guys in that category, especially Panarin. But overall, I mean, Gustafsson's, I think, a big piece of this team. If he could play up to what we're expecting, if he could do what he's shown so far through the preseason, I think he could be a really big piece of this team that could, really help us. Kind of a missing piece, if you will, a guy that fits the system and, with Laviolette, good veteran piece. What about you?
I think, like, again, he's probably, besides Fox or Shesterkin and Fox, I think Zibanejad is the best player on the team.
Yeah.
I think he has a whole, like, we saw in 2019, I don't know if you remember this, but at the end of that season before COVID, he was arguably the best player in the league. Like, he was going to score 50 goals. He has this whole level to his game that I feel like he hasn't really been able to get back to. And I feel like during the season, especially in the playoffs, like, he carried their team. Like, he had, like, I think 4 or 5 games in a row with a goal. Like, he struggled early against the Penguins, and then, like, all of a sudden, I think game 6, he just clicked and he started scoring and scoring. Like, he scores in bunches, and he's a very hot player. He can get streaky. So I feel like I think he's the X factor this season, is if he can come up clutch in the playoffs and kind of drive the offense. I don't think Panarin really has his style of game. I want him to do good, but I just don't think the way he plays, he can really be a big X factor in the playoffs. So I definitely say Zibanejad.
Yeah, that would definitely be one of the the bigger names, more prominent guys that I would think of as well. Him, Panarin. Yeah, I would love to see Mika get back to that 2019 pre-COVID form, because you do make a point that he hasn't quite. I mean, hasn't quite gone back to that where he was just shy of 40 goals last year, and I'd love to see him crack that number. I mean, maybe he hits high 40s, 50s. I mean, who knows? I mean, if he's right and when he's hot and he's right. I mean, we all remember that Capitals game from a couple years ago where he
5
put up.
goals, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So if
Crazy.
he can get back to that form where he's just scoring like a madman, both power play and 5-on-5, that's huge. That's huge for this team, especially postseason. Like him and Kreider are right on the same. If they're right, like him and Kreider on the same line, hot at the same time, that's dangerous. I mean, that's an extremely lethal 1-2 punch from a wing center standpoint. So
I agree,
yep.
100%.
All righty, so that'll do it for the first episode here. You got any closing thoughts before we close things out?
Just excited for the season, hoping that a lot of these young kids can take the next step and just everybody stay healthy.
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree. Just health's the biggest thing. Stay healthy, especially Igor. Gotta, those big time guys have gotta stay healthy for the entire way heading into the postseason, which is, obviously way down the road. Got an 82 game marathon still coming up. We'll have a lot more content coming your way. Podcast coming out next week as well. We'll preview the first couple games of the season as the Rangers will open up the year with a whole lot of road games starting in Buffalo. Then they'll come back home and they'll head out west for an early season Canadian road trip. So we'll get to all that as the season goes on. Again, weekly episodes throughout the season, just the beginning. And stay tuned. A lot more content coming your way. Right now, this will be up on YouTube, but as we move along, we'll also get this up on all the different podcast platforms as well. So stay tuned. A lot more content coming your way. As always, hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for listening.